Welcome back to another episode of the Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid, and today on this day, I have the pleasure of sitting down with a gentleman by the name of Geronimo Robinson. He is an author, professor, speaker, and he has just recently released a new book that is so full of some very rich history and information about the African diaspora that I'm looking forward to getting into and learning more about. But first and foremost, as I always do, sir, I take a quick moment to pause, say thank you to you for making time for me today. Time is a gift. Once we give it, we can't get it back. So I truly appreciate you setting aside this time in your day to sit down and chat with me. And with that, sir, welcome to the show.
Well, I just want to say I'm blessed and thankful for the opportunity to meet you, first of all, and then to be on the show as well. This is new for me to have a podcast, or to be on a podcast, your first one for me. So, and I appreciate the little preliminary talk we had to make sure it wasn't going to be, was so nervous.
Just a little on me, just a little on me.
Oh, I'm thankful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. Well, welcome to the podcast world. So this is just the first of many. I'm going to put that into the world. So this is going
Oh,
to be so. Well, I want to talk about open up right away and talk about your book because it's just so rich from what I read, and the title itself is very intriguing. Spain, Brazil, Moses, and Coltrane, Africa Redefined. Um, can you share why the title, why the diversity in the title, how unpack that, what that means to the reader?
yes, indeed. It's interesting because it just so happened that over the years, as I traveled to different parts of the world, I seem to have um, gravitated towards Spain and Brazil and Israel. And in those travels, I've noticed in Spain the amazing contribution that the Moors made to Spanish culture and then having colonized ancient Spain. And I noticed how reluctant the Spanish were to talk about it. They really not interested in having a lot of conversations about it, which I thought was great. I love that. Oh, y'all don't want to talk about this? You don't want to talk about this palace? The front page of the book is the Alhambra Palace in Spain, one of the more beautiful palaces in Europe, built by blacks. And when you go there, they don't want to talk about it. They just like,
Mm.
oh, it's here, we love it. Well, who built it? Well, did the Moors? Oh yeah, the Moors from Africa. Oh, they're not interested in
Wow.
having a good conversation. So I said, you know what? This would be great for the book. When I thought about doing it, and of course, Brazil has the largest amount of people of color from the African continent living in any country outside of Africa. And they're extremely proud and discuss their African heritage, and the African influence is profound and amazing in Brazil in terms of African culture. So it was great to have a chance to spend time in my book, whole section book talking about that. And then Moses, because I noticed in Israel, the influence of Israel by the Egyptians, because particularly because of Moses, and we know that he was raised by Black Egyptians before the Arabs came into that region. Middle East is an ancient part of the world. There've been civilizations going on there for 4,000 or 5,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's not as important to me as I said to you earlier whether he was Black or not himself. What's important is who raised him, who is responsible for the way he thought, his thought process, and who gave him the ideas of
Mm-hmm.
monotheism and the concept of a unseen God. So those things are important to me. Those things I talk about in there. And then, of course, Coltrane here in the U.S. just reminds me of the incredible influence that John Coltrane had on jazz music, the amazing influence that jazz, hip hop, even Black literature, Black architecture, Black medicine, Black science, all those things have had on the emerging of the American Republic.
Okay. Okay. So was it a process, a journey to writing the book? Did you just wake up one day and say, this is the time to do this, or?
Yeah, I woke up about 20-something years ago and decided to do this. And
Well,
then life got in the way, children, family, taking care of parents. And then this last couple of years, my oldest daughter said, "Hey, Dad, I found a guy who's interested in publishing. You don't you have this book that you've been working on since I was a little
awesome.
kid?" And so I said, "Oh, yeah." And so the guy talked to me. He said, "Oh, yeah. I'd be really happy to look at this book." He looked at it. He said, "Oh, man, he said, you need to publish this. So you really need to publish this." And it's really, the journey for this book has been really interesting because when I first did it, I think they were using floppy disks.
Oh, that's been a while ago.
So I transferred it to WordPerfect. I transferred it to these these different iterations of Microsoft, and to get it to a point where I could put it on a flash drive to send it to them. That was a long process, my dear.
Oh, we just told how seasoned we were with the floppy disk. Okay.
I think so. Yeah, 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 yeah. I think I dated myself a little bit, and that's okay.
That's
That's
okay. That's okay because you need to be a little seasoned to do the work that you have done. You have done the work you have done.
yeah.
And,
So
and I think a lot of people don't really understand the impact of, well, let me not start with the Middle Passage because a lot of people don't understand that Africans were actually exploring the world long before the Middle Passage
yes,
came along. Can you
yes.
shed some light on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, my book is mostly about celebrating the influence of Africa on the United States, the most powerful country that's ever existed. Would not be here were it not for what the African slaves did. And the social infrastructure, Black America changed the social infrastructure of American society. We would not be a democracy. We would not be who we still, try to say we are. We're really not. But in terms of those things that we aspire to, that came because of what Black people did. And I focused on the Moorish influence on Spain and Africans' influence on parts of the Middle East and Northern Africa because we need to see all this stuff that happened way before slavery in America happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thousands of years before that happened. Um, One of the things that I talk about in my book too is how um, people get kind of neuromantic and they're thinking about um, what is Black and who Black people are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of different extremes. One extreme, oh, everybody's Black. Anybody who did anything is Black. The first Black people in Europe, the first people in Australia were Black. We assigned everything to the Black folk. And then there are the people, which seem to be quite a bit of people who do this, say, well, those people were light skinned and those people weren't really
Ah,
Black at all. And it's amazing how Egypt is going through this,
yeah,
how we put it, this little controversy in terms of,
yeah,
trying to understand who Cleopatra was. I'm like, wow,
yeah,
really? This
yeah.
is interesting.
Why is that
And
even a debate? Yeah.
yeah, it's really amazing. And one of the things I talk about to people who have been to Egypt, who's talked to me about what I said in my book. Well, I've been to Egypt, and the people in Cairo were really light skinned, and look close to white or whatever. So I can see why they're really not a Black people at all. And that analogy reminds me of somebody coming to the United States from either outer space, coming from some other planet, or they're coming from Australia somewhere. They go to downtown New York, they go to downtown DC, they go to Kansas, they go to some other city based in the US, and they see all white people, mostly white people. But Native Americans are the first inhabitants
Yes.
in this country, and they're still here,
Yes.
but you have to go to a reservation to see them. That
Yes.
doesn't mean that America was founded by white people. It just means that
Sure.
they took over, and they're the dominant people you see. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean they're the dominant people
That's not the
we
reality. That's not the reality. That's not the history.
not by any means. And the same thing with Egypt. You go into the interior of the country, go south, you will see the original African people who are descendants of the Nubians,
Mm.
and they're still there. They
Yes.
haven't gone anywhere. They just got pushed down into the other parts of the country away from the big cities because they were taken over by these other groups. Because it's such an old culture. You've had intermingling with so many different people over thousands and thousands of years. So, I tell people, be careful just getting caught up in some of the narrow descriptions of who is Black and who's not, and who you see there, and being indicative of who was really there in the beginning.
Yeah.
you know. And the other thing I want to remind people of too is that for a culture like Egypt, or Kemet as they called themselves originally, is that um, they have a consistent herstory of about 5 to 6 to 8,000 years. We don't have that concept in the United States. We are really proud of the fact that the Republic's been around for 300 years almost. Wow, that's amazing for us.
Yes.
So think about the possibilities of what a country can do if they have a 3 to 5 to 6,000 year history. Just think about what the pharaohs can carry over to the next generation, the architectural planning, these scientific discoveries, if they get passed on for thousands of years. We don't have that concept in the West.
Mm-hmm.
We can't get a building to last more than a couple of hundred years if we're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
They have structures that are still existing that they built
Thousands of years.
thousands of years ago. We don't know that. We don't know what that means. And so because we don't know what it means, Europeans say time and time and again, well, this was built by white people. We couldn't have done something like that because we don't understand how they did it. We can't explain it.
Mm.
So we say that these other people, oh no, you know what, we changed our mind. Aliens did this. Aliens built this. Yeah, and I can't tell people how many hundreds of TV shows, movies over the years where some alien got to Egypt, or a TV show like Stargate, science fiction thing. Yeah, we did this, and we're aliens, and we're here to help you out, and we're here to help to elucidate your people about how to build a pyramid.
Mm-hmm. Anything to not give Africans the credit for doing the work or having the capacity, the mental capacity, intelligence to do the work.
And to capacity to do the work and do something they still can't do.
Can't figure out. Can't figure out.
They still can't figure out. And most people wouldn't know this, but during the time that they built those pyramids, the granite they used was from the quarries and stuff in outlying areas. And when the pyramids were built, they glistened in the daytime and they glistened at night. They were shiny. Can you imagine something the size of a city block of New York?
Beautiful.
Where the whole thing shined and glistened. I can see why they were several wonders of the world. We don't have that, and we don't understand. Imagine living in a culture where you walk down the street and you see a building that size, that's sophisticated,
yes,
that architecturally intricate and complex, and it's glistening in the night. You live there.
Wow.
And your people built this.
Wow.
So again, we don't have those concepts, but those people and those pharaohs, who descendants of pharaohs who did those amazing things, raised Moses. They were his adopted parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they passed on all this knowledge to him. There was no coincidence to me that God wanted him to be raised by that family.
No
So,
coincidence.
and that is important in terms of his philosophy, his concept of monotheism, because they were toying with that whole thing during the time that he was, living with them. They were discussing with each other, and we don't know the details about how far along they had come with understanding monotheism because nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to write about that. They don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I humbly present to everyone information on what I have found and understanding the Egyptian culture and who raised him. And that being as interested in his blackness. Well, we know he married a black woman, though. We do know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty clear. So when he left, Egypt, he wanted somebody probably who was similar to the women he was around, who were black in the Pharaoh's court.
Mm-hmm.
Which and again, we just know what he did.
Okay.
And he murdered a sister, and then he came back to Egypt to demand that his people were freed or whatever, which made sense in a sense, but also he must have a lot of mixed feelings, being raised by them and then going back and then say, hey, look, this doesn't work, and you guys better stop, and then I'm gonna have God punish y'all, which they did, and so it must have been very interesting him having these competing conflicts going on in his brain, but he was a father of something that's amazing and beautiful, which is very African. When he left Israel, he talked about the 12 tribes. Tribal classifications on African classification.
True, true.
So there's different things that I talk about in the book that clearly showed his influence by the African people, and what he did to spread this amazing religion, which fathered two other religions, mothered two other religions, once he finished. So yeah, so those are things that are important to me. And I tend to enjoy talking about things that people don't necessarily want to hear. People of European descent don't want to hear the things I'm
Well,
talking about
and
because
that's curious because Christianity, you would think that they would want to buy into Moses and hear about Moses, or is it just they only want to hear their slant to Moses?
they are really mostly interested in King James's version, and I love how Europeans do this because Europeans, some of their texts say, this is my version, this is the King James version, this is not your version. This is my version. I love how they say that. This is the King James. King James, an Englishman who knew very little about Middle Eastern culture, but he had people writing this stuff down. This is
Yeah,
the
he
King
just
James version.
commissioned the book. He just commissioned to write a book.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he said,
His version of it.
it's my version. That's what's so
Yes.
amazing that people go back. Oh, this is holy. Wow. Okay. The man admitted it. He didn't say, oh, this is the God's word. No, this is my version. And I still want you to see this God's word. Wow. That's deep. So, I talk a little bit about, some of the other versions in terms of what was going on, in Africa, and the Coptic Church being the oldest non-Jewish church on the planet, and of
Mm-hmm.
course it would be in Egypt. Of course they
Of
would
course.
embrace this before the Catholics and the Europeans did because they were in Africa and they were closest to where Christ did his work. As we know, some of his disciples went to Africa while they were being dispersed, and he went there first. We know
Mm-hmm.
that. So some of this stuff is not rocket science, I would say. And
Common sense, but
yeah, but it's just tough for people. And many when people see the book, some people take a deep breath and get very quiet, and then other people, wow, this is really cool.
wow.
Yeah, just the title alone, people, yeah, they get.
In 2024, why is it so hard, you think, for people to digest and accept that I might have been wrong in what I was taught to believe?
I think there's a underlying psychological challenge to how they're thinking with my title because a lot of books they're used to seeing it. Yeah, black people did so and so. Blacks are responsible for the railroad. Blacks are
Mm-hmm.
responsible for doing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that let's redefine things that you consider European. This really of African descent, and I'm redefining it.
Okay. Okay.
I redefine this. Well, who are you? Wait a minute, you can't do that. You're not white. Well, yes, I can. And the interesting thing is that a lot of things that are in here, as I mentioned to you earlier, my colleagues at Harvard know is correct. But they choose not to say anything except to me to tell me, yeah, we know what you're saying is correct. You're going to tell anybody? No, we're not going to tell anybody, Geronimo.
Mm.
But
Hmm.
the people who are responsible for some of the original concepts of American education told me, or the people who at the schools who have done those things, they told me, yeah, we know that what you're saying is correct. So
Well,
it's frustrating to hold that stuff in and to know things that some people who deny this to the country know is correct. But then we don't know these things. A lot of blacks don't know these things. That's a lot to hold in. So part of my goal too was to write this so that I can help to elucidate people and get off my chest things that I have been
yes.
told and I've seen and I know is correct.
True, true. And I think for us, when we know the totality of our history, and I just think it instills a richer sense of pride in our capability and our capacity. So
Yes,
it is.
yes. And I'm thankful to be able to talk about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And to listen to you talk about your Harvard colleagues and this perpetual wanting to cover up the totality of our contributions. I mean, that in itself that's very frustrating. Very, especially when you think of the academia world. Like these
Right,
should be the cream of the crop. Let's, tell the truth and
right.
this is how it happens. But to be like, shh, no, we don't talk about that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And they don't have to worry about it because I'm going to keep it real with you. All of my colleagues who were there with me said, we're not going to get into this. We're not going to rock the boat. We're not going to argue with this. You know, um, most of the Black men who were there with me have become very successful individuals. A guy named Barry in particular. Oh, I'm not going to talk about people's names who were there and just busy, just smelling themselves. Man, I'm happy. Wow. You know what I did? Do you know me? And I came in there, as I told you earlier, I said, I have problems with all you all. And before I leave, I'm going to give y'all a nice present, a going away present. And that's exactly what I did. And for anyone who's listening, I gave them a going away present. I brought in two of my colleagues, one from University of Virginia, another from Temple, PhDs, who talked about how ancient Egyptians are responsible for colonizing Southern Europe. We brought civilization to Europe. And they all sat there and listened.
Mm-hmm.
It was a powerful presentation.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I'm going to be present and told him in a very nice way, okay, so now what? How you like me now? and to my disappointment, people weren't as angry about it as I thought because they said, oh yeah, we know that you're right. You know I'm right? You know that these presenters are correct? Yeah, we know. We're not going to tell anybody. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
So that's part of why I did this book too.
Awesome. Now you're a professor. Do you teach this in your courses or?
So the book just came out,
Okay.
just a few weeks ago, but I had been part-time professor at the University of Cyprus over in Southern Europe. And people say, well, why, in Europe? Well, for one thing, depending on what part of Europe you're in, they're very open to hearing some of these things. Mm-hmm. Very interesting in my perspective. And in addition to some of the concepts I'll talk about in the book, when I lecture, I talk about the intersectionality between the civil rights movement and the disabilities movement. Mm-hmm. And they're very interested in that and how the civil rights movement inspired white American parents who had children with disabilities to really fight for laws to give them their children more rights and to be more inclusive, to have them in the schools like we did for Blacks being included in our school systems. Okay. And I published several articles in the a journal called the American Association on Intellectual Development and Disabilities, Intellectual Disabilities Journal. Yeah, it's called ID Journal. Mm-hmm. And I'm also been a consulting editor for it over the years to help other people get published. But this is my first book. So, but I would talk about these things in Europe. I talk about these things in Botswana. I talk about these things in other parts of the world, but I go in and lecture or whatever. And because I'm a fellow with this organization, I get to speak pretty much any part of what I want to go to. It's very cool.
Okay, awesome. It's amazing. We have to step outside your own home country to have people be receptive to you.
Oh yes, yeah. And again, my schoolmates up in Cambridge, and other schools, they don't want to. The Black colleges don't want to talk about it. They're trying to get these degrees. They can make $500,000 a year, become a U.S. governor, become whatever they're going to do. I'm not going to say their names. I'm just saying the people who were there with me, they were, very interested in getting their careers going, so they were quiet. Mm. They weren't trying to, say anything. And I was president of the Black Student Union, so I was mouthing off every time I could. Told you I wasn't in the best of moods when I was there, so I said, well, y'all gonna suffer for that. Y'all gonna pay for me not being in a good mood right now because I'm pissed about some things. Excuse my French.
You're gonna hear what I got to say.
Yes, indeed. And was surprised that I graduated. I really thought they were gonna kick me out. I was really, y'all let me stay here. Wow. Because in each of my classes, I would argue with them. Every class, no, that's not true. That's not true. Greece was civilized because of what Blacks did. Obviously, the classes said. I talk about, in the field of history, when I call it herstory, I talked about the influence of Blacks in psychology and different things. So every class I took, I was arguing with people. Mm. And so, I was really surprised they let me out.
But I think that should be the beauty, especially of the college experience, is to be able to have differences of opinion. I
Yes.
think that's the whole climate of college culture, at least from my experience. But we're glad you graduated.
But if I didn't, I wouldn't have cared. Because for me, it's about telling the truth.
Yes.
And you tell the truth will set you free.
Amen.
And I said these things when I was there and at UVA to honor my ancestors who never got the opportunity to go to those schools, to argue with them because they were segregated. It was against the law to do those things.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. We stand on some great shoulders.
Oh my gracious.
And I want to segue to one of the shoulders that we stand on that you are connected to and you have some history with. Could you share with us a lady that's near and dear to you, Miss Victoria Adams, and some of the young folks that might be listening have no clue or never heard? Could you share her rich legacy?
Yeah, every place I go, every country I go to, um, every lecture I do, which may or may not even involve civil rights at all. Just I still talk about my godmother Victoria Adams because she and Annie Devine and the great and amazing Fannie Lou Hamer were the principal founders of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And I'm not sure why she cared about me as much as she did. And that's part of my own insecurities. I'm still trying to figure out why we became as close as we did. But her middle son went to UVA with me. We went there together. And back in those days, there were no cell phones. So when she come on the grounds looking for her son, she rolled the window down and asked for the black students, hey, you see my son Cecil? Oh, he's over at Geronimo's house. So she and her husband drive over to my house and my apartment or whatever, and they would sit there and chat and visit. Never said a word to me while I was at UVA, how famous she was. Had no clue what she had done. And then when he and I graduated, he called me one day about a year later. Oh yeah, mom's being honored at the Radio City Music Hall, New York City, and all these movie stars and civil activists stuff are honoring her. What? What's your mother? Oh, my mother founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, and she's the one that announced the formation of the party. She's the first woman of color to run for U.S. Senate from the state of Mississippi.
Yes.
And to get the context of that, most people would get shot and killed for voting in Mississippi. That's why they fought so hard for voters' rights. You get killed. The thought of somebody running for national office, Mississippi, that's
Mm-hmm.
insane.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Especially a
insane.
female, especially a female.
A brown-skinned black female.
Mm-hmm.
So the things she did were just unheard of. And so a young pastor from Atlanta used to drive down to her house and just sit there in awe of her and talk to her on the outside of her house on the swings with my schoolmate in his arms. And that man would later be known as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Awesome.
He used to go and visit her, and she became one of his closest advisors. And then when Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, he had several strategic goals. One is to go to the United Nations and talk about not just racism, but human rights issues because of how blacks were treated. Another one of his goals was to support the efforts of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. So I had pictures she gave me of him speaking at her rallies. Malcolm X don't speak at people's rallies. That was a very busy, amazing prince of a man.
Mm-hmm.
But he really thought there was nobody like those ladies. He thought they were awesome. So my godmother talked to him every couple of days or whatever.
Beautiful.
And I get chills even when I think about it now. I still get chills when I think about it. And I think about knowing her over the years and just, she and I had dinner together and, she needed to take her someplace when she was in Baltimore. Oh, son, come over here and take me to blah, blah, blah. I take her and I'm sitting there. This lady is world famous. And we're just chatting.
Just as humble as she could be.
Like family. And she's not talking about, and I know so many people, well, I know so-and-so and so, she wasn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why most of the people who, maybe listening haven't heard of her as much as Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer was very, I'll just say it, she was very loud.
Yes, we see. If you catch the footage, you can see.
Yeah. She was very strong presence.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Bob Moses discovered her from the Snake movement. He
Mm-hmm.
discovered her and told Victoria And hey, look, we need to have her to speak for us because she's so strong in her. And they said, oh yeah, she's wonderful. So those three started working together
Okay.
to do the different speeches and stuff. And if most people are not familiar with why those three are so famous, it's because of the 1964 Democratic National Convention. Um, those three women demanded to be seated with the Mississippi delegation, which was all white. Mississippi delegation said, "Get out, go about your business." And so Annie Devine called them out. She said, "You know what? Y'all are being polite about how you put us out there. If the cameras weren't here, you just cuss us out, use the N-word, and throw us out today. You're being nice about it because the camera's here." It's oh shoot. And the Russians and the Chinese were taking pictures. They were filming all this while Annie Devine was talking. Then Fatal Hamer got up and did a speech about in the convention talking about why they couldn't be seated. And she said, "Is this America? Is this America, the home of the land of the free, home of the brave, who are not that black people do so?" So the international press went crazy.
Yeah.
They went crazy over this stuff. And they came back to the President Johnson and said, why can't they be seated? You're a democracy. You get on us because we're communists. We hear you all doing all this. And then on top of that, Johnson got very angry when Fannie Lou Hamer spoke. And he told the Democrat National, "Get her off the stage. Get her off. She's interfering with my speech. Get that in that word off the stage." And she refused to be moved. So it's just amazing hearing that story and seeing it on film when I see it. And Victoria Adams was one of the thinkers. She was one of the planners. So you wouldn't see her out front as much. She planned a lot of the protests and how they want to, navigate through this whole thing. And so the next year, Congress was so embarrassed by the international footage about this that they decided to pass the 1965 Voters' Rights Act. And the picture I showed you earlier was the three of them being the first women of color to be seated in the halls of U.S. Congress to watch a vote being passed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did she have something to do with the March on Washington?
Interesting story. So they decided they did not want Fannie Lou or Victoria or Annie to speak because they decided that, first of all, they were brown skinned, they were women, and they wanted to be all men speakers. They didn't know how well people would accept. And so the only woman on the dais, she didn't speak, but the only one was up there was Dr. Dorothy Height. Because she was light skinned and very prominent, as position following with Mary McLeod Bethune in her organization. They didn't understand it, but she couldn't speak either. So it was very interesting how that whole thing worked. But they were there. And when you see the movies about the Birmingham March and different things that happened, they kind of sort of not giving the whole picture. The Voters' Rights Act movement was really Victoria Adams and Annie Devine and Fannie Lou Hamer's movement. Dr. King was involved with them, but and he was there when Lyndon Johnson signed the bill. Oh, so that was what he. No, that's not really true. But again, black men sometimes can dominate some of the literature, even when it's something that a woman did, because this country still has to work on how we perceive things.
Yeah.
But I mean, because Dr. King would tell you too, if he was like, "Oh yeah, she was they were the ones who made it."
No, it was the ladies behind. It was the ladies behind me, right? Yeah.
Right. And behind and in front of me, yeah. Because Fannie Lou Hamer was no joke. Nobody stood in front of her.
She's a bigger woman with a presence.
Yeah. She didn't play. And then in 2004, they invited my godmother to come to the Democratic National Convention, and he honored her and he apologized for kicking her out.
Awesome.
Yeah. And she invited me. And I couldn't make it. And that was the same convention where this young senator from the North made his first speech on his way to running for office to be the first black male president of the United States. So that was a really interesting. I didn't know it was gonna be that interesting of a convention, but I missed. But yeah, she came in. And they had a nice ceremony for her. I had a nice ceremony for her too at Harvard. I had Harvard put out the red carpet for her. Had a nice event to honor her while she's still alive. So every chance I cook, I would have people honor her. Someone is to honor her.
Awesome. It's amazing to me, that so many of us don't know all of our history, the totality of our history. And, like like you said, some of it can be slanted a certain way.
Yes.
Even when it comes to, and this is off topic, like with the Montgomery bus boycott,
Oh, yeah.
people don't understand that. Yeah, Rosa Parks was put as the face of it, but there was actually women before her that had refused to give up her seat, but they didn't have the look to, so we're
Yeah, that is
constantly.
such an insult to think that one black woman in the 40s was the first to refuse. You know how many black people refused and sit in the back of the bus long before, and it limits us when kids say, yeah, there was just one woman back in the day and she refused, so that's when we can all be free. Now, no, we've been, since the beginning of our time here, we've been resisting and fighting.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, if you just look at the history of Haiti, that is a whole bunch of us. Like, look, we're tired, and we're going to fight, and we're not going to be enslaved, and that's the foundation of Haiti's freedom is on that. But
Yes, yes.
you
And,
know,
and the United States government to this day will not let that go. They are still angry about a group of poor slaves beating the United States Navy and the French Navy at a time when they thought they were superior to everybody. They
mhm.
are still angry about that to this day. It's just amazing.
Amazing. Let it go. Let it go.
Right?
Let it go. Well, let me circle back before I let you go because I want to talk about you mentioned it earlier when you were talking, but I have his whole collection, so it's a little soft spot for me. Can you explain in deeper context how Coltrane has such a great impact on U.S. history? Because that's my man right there. I love me some Coltrane. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Represent. You know, it's funny because um, I think when the year 2000 hit, American scholars put together a list of the greatest inventions of the 20th century. And I think also some of the greatest inventions of humans so far. And jazz was on there,
Hmm.
which it should be, because it is not only America's classical music, which is somewhat a limiting description because it's just so much more sophisticated and complicated than anything else we've seen, but also it's one of the art forms that has gone all over the world. And in some ways, I think Europeans and Asians appreciate jazz more than we do in America. When in other parts of the world, when they go in and hear, they dress up, they sit in the concert. It's a big deal
Hmm.
because it is so sophisticated, so amazing, so complex. John Coltrane is kind of indicative and symbolic of the complexity and the nuances of what African American atonal music did, which is what I call it. I call it African American atonal music because he used the whole 12 tone series as opposed to just some notes to do it. And he was a master. He was one of the masters, um, to a point where there was a movement in San Francisco seeing him as a deity, which I understand actually. I actually
Hmm.
to understand the complexity of what he did,
Amazing. Yes. Yeah.
the complexity of what he did. You kind of say, wow, is this guy really human in that? Um, he worked with some of the other jazz greats and was able to learn from some of these guys he was with, and once he did that, he went off on his own and just really made such a huge impact on American music. And then one of the things too, where musicians and musicologists and historians are so interested in him is his ability to take songs like My Favorite Things and come up with this whole new interpretation of it. Nobody had done that before like that. It
Yes.
was
Yes.
just, I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Beautiful. Yes.
So when I talk about, I could have said, Spain, Brazil, Moses, and jazz, but I said Coltrane because he really symbolizes the complexity of African American music and African American culture because we have done things in this country which the whole world respects and really looks at it like, wow,
Yeah.
you guys are amazing. It's amazing everywhere except America. What we've done is really in music, culture, science, we are amazing everywhere pretty much except America. That's, you got Russians studying these things. You got the Chinese, when I was doing my work in honoring Victoria Adams, I had Japanese students. Oh, let's help you. We're familiar with her. Let's help you to honor her. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So they would help me do things. They know about jazz. They take this stuff very seriously. Because I have a whole section on jazz, but I have a section on Coltrane, going into detail the complexities of what he did with syncopations and with the atonal variations of themes that he used. I have a whole section just on him because he's there's nobody really been like him. But
Yeah.
we produced that. We produced these people who elevated music in a way that we haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, are respected so much more in other parts of the world than they are here.
Yeah, and being the age, the seasoned age that I am, I grew up listening, hearing that some of our greatest creative people had to go to other countries to be appreciated, from, your Eartha Kitt to Dorothy Dandridge, to Paul Robeson and stuff like that. I mean,
Of
it's
course.
just so sad that you can't get your flowers here in America. You
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
I've never understood that. Never understood that.
Yeah. I'm the former president of the Municipal Opera Company of Baltimore. I had my own opera company in Baltimore, one of the major Black opera company institutions in the country. And the Baltimore Opera Company would not take Blacks. Even during after segregation was over, they didn't want to see Black people. So we were taking the Asians and the Hispanics and Blacks. They would start with us. We send them to Europe. They go to Europe, and Europe loved Black opera singers, and then they come
Yeah.
back, and then they be famous. Yeah, so we did
You
that
got to
quite a
go
bit.
there first, and then.
Yeah, yeah, because Baltimore Opera wouldn't take them.
Mm,
This was in the 90s and the 2000s. This wasn't like in the 20s or 30s and 40s. No.
mm. All right. So, Mr. Robinson, one of the things that we are charged with is paying it forward and teaching the younger generation. So, if you were to, advise some younger folks, where would you tell them to kind of get their start to learning more about where they come from, who they are, and the rich history that is theirs to own?
Well, I'm a firm believer in books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I know the internet is very helpful to a lot of people. It's very quick information, is very accessible. But the problem is that the people who are writing those articles online are not necessarily people who have our best interests in mind.
True.
So people really need to be careful. The books are still there, and look at the books in conjunction with. If you have a particular country in mind that you want to learn about, go there
Mm-hmm.
and talk to people. That's a lot of what I did that got me started with the book, is talking to people in other parts of the world who shared with me, and I saw things they were doing, and how they were seeing things, and it gave me a different perspective on how to write about America, because even when you're Black American, studying Black American history here, it's just difficult.
Yeah,
It's just some biases
a
that you
lot.
have to deal with. Yeah, yeah. So travel gives you such a different perspective of the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And to tell young people listening to, don't be afraid to decide to take up a particular topic and write about it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
research it, and you give us some ideas of what you think is important. Why not?
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not?
And I
You
like
know?
that you mentioned traveling. I think sometimes it's very important that you get out of your city or your
Oh my
town to have a
gracious. Yeah.
different perspective.
Yeah. 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 Those things are very important. And understanding that we're somewhat limited. Even when we're scholars here, we're limited in what we think, because other parts of the world may have more information, or richness of information, a diversity of information that we don't have here. We have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of information, but it's very skewed,
Oh yeah.
which is what I've been saying, and what I say in my book, skewed. A lot of stuff here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And,
Um,
and you get a whole different story when you go someplace and you sit down with grandma who's been in the city for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and can tell you about when she was a little girl and she remembers here. What you get a whole different story when you actually sit down with some people in other places and hear the history.
exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so those things are important to do, and not be afraid to kind of come up with your own narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the beginning of my book, I kind of spent a bit of time talking about challenging the notion of history, because I want to remind people what it says is what it really is. That's his story. It's not your story. It's not my story. It's certainly not our story.
It's his story. Yes.
And he says it. The people, yeah, this is his story. The people being very
How
clear.
I want it told. How I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
it.
But they're very clear about it. I don't know why people miss it so much, because people who wrote this history, because it's his story.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear her story.
Awesome. Awesome. I like
Because,
it.
and I'm very sensitive about that, because my mother's story and so many women in my family, their stories are not told as easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the book Hidden Figures, because the title is it was hidden. That's all. It wasn't not like we didn't help. Black women didn't help get people to the moon. We just don't know what to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
Wow. Wow.
that's deep.
And to see everything she had to go through just to do her job on a day-to-day basis. And I mean,
Yes.
the genius that she had, and them wanting to squash it was just a phenomenal story.
Oh, it's yeah,
A
yeah.
phenomenal story. And like you said, we're still struggling with women's stories being kind of covered up still
Right.
to this day, and on top of that being black as well, or brown skin,
Particularly brown skin. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
I'm very sensitive about that, because
yeah,
my mother, when she was looking for jobs, my parents separated, the Washington Post, Norfolk Ledger Star, most papers in the 60s and 70s still said light skinned blacks only apply.
yeah,
You're brown skin, you can apply for the job. I remember that. That was very frustrating to see that.
yeah,
There's another layer on top of being black. That a lot of people may not realize that. And so my mother was college educated. A lot of jobs she just couldn't get,
yeah.
you
I think
know?
a lot of younger folks don't remember phrases like the paper bag test and stuff like
Right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of kids are not aware of that, but
Yeah.
that was a very real thing back in the day. Very
Right.
real
Right.
thing.
And see, here's the thing, too. It was real then, right? But even though it's subtle now, some of those messages are still there.
It's still subtle.
And Fairfax County, for instance, and I know, okay, but I'm going to go on and say it because I put this stuff out there. Um, the head of one of the agencies is a very light skinned guy. His assistant's very light skinned. And like, what? We still doing this nonsense?
We
We're
still,
still doing it?
we
We
still,
really? This is what we still,
we
okay. All
still,
right.
we still,
Yeah.
we still. Some stuff is still ingrained. We're still working on it. We're still working on it.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Robinson, I'm going to ask you my random question, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us how we pick up the book and catch you speaking somewhere, maybe. So
Oh,
let's
yes.
see what we've got here. Name something that you really hate paying for.
I have no interest in paying for streaming services, so I can be insulted by some of the things they have on there about Cleopatra not being black and all this other nonsense I have to see. But my youngest daughter once said, "I like, we argue about it, and I'm going to take it off." I mean, but yeah, I don't know why. It's just, and every now and then there's a couple of things on there that actually historically correct. Every once in a blue moon,
Every now and then.
Harry and Meghan's story, that was an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why that was such an interesting story, and I, don't mind having paid for that, is because most people, I don't know what they call it that, but they talked about how after slavery was over, the British government continued to pay reparations to the slave owners until 2015.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep.
And I said, well, I'll be darned. Because America did the same thing. America paid reparations to slave owners
Yes.
after they had promised it to the slaves. They did it for a little while. Oh, changed their mind. After Lincoln was assassinated, they changed their minds. But that was some deep stuff to see that. Like,
Yeah.
wow, it's not just an American thing. That's a European concept. We're going to
It's a
pay
European thing. Yeah. Yeah.
two reparations to the slave owners.
Yeah. And it seems like Great Britain, United Kingdom is a little quicker on their feet, and kind of saying, oops, we really made some mistakes. I heard that they just recently within the past year, returned some artifacts that they had in their museums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're kind of trying to fix some of their errors quicker than we are here in America.
Right. Right. But I wonder if part of that's because Harry and his wife put their business on the street, put it out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's had a love for us for quite some time. So.
You think?
Let me be politically correct as possible. Well, so
Well,
how we pick up the book and how we catch you speaking and all of that good stuff.
so the book is on the website GeronimoRobinson.com. Just my name and .com, and the book pops up, and you can order it and order it for yourself or for family members. It's GeronimoRobinson.com. And in addition to that, so we're going to have some of the different speaking things coming up on there as well. But I do want to mention another event. I'm having a gala on Juneteenth
Okay.
in Alexandria, Virginia, where right near where the slave ports were. And the name of the event is From Georgetown to Old Town, a Juneteenth celebration of Black architectural excellence. And we're going to celebrate Black Georgetown and neighborhoods that were built by Blacks.
Black Georgetown.
Yeah, and Georgetown is one of the more, for people who don't know, is one of the more exclusive neighborhoods in the country. It's where the U.S. senators live and the Congress people live and the rich and the glitzy and stuff. And it was built
not a bunch of people that look like us.
Right, but we were the first people there. We built it for ourselves. And people have this misconstrued thought that, oh yeah, we live in mostly poor neighborhoods. No, that's not true. We built the nicer neighborhoods, and not just, we built them for white people. No, we built them for ourselves. And what happened in Georgetown was they couldn't burn it down like they did Tulsa. Tulsa, they just burned that down. That was too much. There were too much banking, business things going on, so they tore it down. I know, it sounds good.
It was the white shopkeeper who was mad with the brother across the way that was doing more business than him, and then a lot of other stuff happening. And but Georgetown, go back to Georgetown.
Yeah, so with Georgetown, they couldn't burn it down. It was too close to the White House. After they built this beautiful neighborhood for themselves, too close. Okay, so when you leave, can I buy your house? I'll pay you $4,000. Oh, okay, I'll buy it. I'll let you buy it. And so then this DC city government, okay, now they're gone. We're going to put an addendum to the lease, a covenant to the lease, that says no Negroes will ever be allowed to buy the property. So every time we sold it, a white family would come in, sell it to their families or sell it to people around there who are white. And slowly they were able to have us leave the neighborhood. Now, any Black person who didn't sell could stay. So I know some of the families who are descendants of the original people who built the neighborhood. And they're coming to my Juneteenth celebration.
Awesome history.
Yeah,
wow.
I know. I met some of the families. And I didn't know myself there was a Black neighborhood when I came there. I didn't know myself. They keep this stuff so quiet.
For a reason.
Yes. Yeah. So if you look on eventbrite.com and look up Black Georgetown or Juneteenth, I'm the only person pretty much about to have a Juneteenth celebration on Eventbrite. So you'll see the link. If you're in the DC area, you want to come to the event and celebrate with us.
All right, we might check you out.
Yes, on eventbrite.com, and it's Black Georgetown and the Juneteenth celebration.
Okay. Well, anytime I get to sit down and get some gleams of knowledge about my history, I am always pleased, always pleased. I just can never learn enough, and it just, once you think you've learned this, and then it's like, oh, that too and that too. So it especially enjoyed hearing about your godmother Victoria Adams, because so many times we hear about Miss Hamer, but like there was more there. So
yeah, there were 3 ladies there actually.
Yeah. Well, sir, I'm looking forward to the next book and the next book and some more history and some more history and some more history, and you irritating some other folks like you did. Keep on doing what you do.
And I do want to say this one quote as I finish up for my book. Is actually the beginning of the book. And the book starts off saying, a Nubian woman became one with the Nile, wombed, nourished, and blew the breath of life into the first sentient Homo sapien being. That's how I begin.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for giving us our due. Thank you for giving us our due. I appreciate it. On behalf of all of us, I appreciate it. So,
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
likewise, and much success to you. Much success to you, and just keep on. Because so many people are trying to suppress
Yes.
us. So keep on.
Yes. Thank you so much.
That is all for this week's episode of The Male Perspective. I'm your host, Lana Reid, and I will see everybody next time.